Thank you so much for coming here. Uh, we are here to talk about unleashing GenAI for humanistic interactions. I think all of us have been hearing Forrester, Gartner yesterday, today, talking how GenAI is a more stepping stone and how conversational AI is a more of a stepping stone into Gen AI. And I think this is a topic that is in the heart of digital innovation that all of us are going through, how interactions are becoming more humanistic, how our interactions with brands are changing on a daily basis, how we interact with our banks, how we interact with our other retail outlets in terms of uh, chatbots, and going on to the next step in terms of virtual assistants. And they are no longer just tools. They have become a digital component that all of us are interacting with on literally a daily basis. So over here, I have Adam Warshaw with me, Senior Vice President of Banking Financial Services at Kore.ai, and Hitesh. He's a Senior Vice President for BFSI Vertical Americas for Persistent Systems. I'm Vivek, part of the Persistent System group over here. That's a partner for Kore.ai. So we'll start off with some questions today for both Adam as well as Hitesh. If you guys have any questions, we'll have a small Q&A at the end of it as well. Adam, if you don't mind, I can start with you. Uh, Obviously, Kore.ai is a platform that's at the forefront of the conversational AI brigade that started. You guys have been talking about conversational AI leading more into Gen AI. How do you think this is impacting the chatbot into the human interactions area? What are you seeing in terms of the industry and the platform advancing this entire conversational AI paradigm shift into Gen AI?
Yeah, so one of the things I always talk about with my financial services customers is that 15 months ago, ChatGPT exploded onto the scene, right? And there may be some early adopters before that. If you think about what ChatGPT actually did, it's access to information, right? At the heart of what you're doing and interacting with ChatGPT, you're asking a question about the history of something, or high school kids writing papers from it, right? And so when you look at what people are starting to expect from organizations, whether you're a bank, a financial institution, consumer packaged goods company, whatever it might be, when they come to you guys, they're looking for information or how to do something or to execute a task without having to interact with a human, right? And so what we've done is created some pieces of the platform in the last 15 months or so to give us the ability to access information quicker, right? Everyone's got FAQs. Who's got FAQs on their website? Everybody, I'm sure, right? And so even though those FAQs are there, what do they still do? They still call you, right? They still chat with you. They still want to take, create a case or fill out a form, right? And so how do we bring all of that content that you guys have both publicly available and privately available behind, maybe it's an account login or whatever, and bring it to the forefront at their fingertips, regardless of the time of day, regardless of channel, right? In a very conversational way, right? And so when we deploy like a voice or digital assistant, we don't just give them the options to click what buttons do you want to do, right? It's how can we help you? Right? And then they tell you, I'm looking for information on the latest rates on your CDs. I'm looking to file a complaint about a restaurant. I'm looking to do something, right? And so when you think about what AI and automation is really doing, it's providing information at your fingertips, regardless of channel, and it's helping you automate tasks that normally would have been done by a human, right? Freeing up your contact center agents, freeing up HR employees, freeing up IT folks to do more strategic stuff, right? Building out new applications, building out new strategic products, whatever it might be. And so when you take a look at all that, that's really changing the way people are expecting to interact with you, right? Just like they did on the iPhone, right? Just like they did on the internet, just like they did on personal computers, right? They want to bring all of that stuff with them into the enterprise and how they interact with your enterprise.
Thanks, Adam. Uh, Hitesh, I'll probably follow up a similar question on those lines. So what Adam was talking about is how a lot of financial institutions and other companies are using conversational AI to change the experience of their end consumers and the kind of conversations they are having. You being from a financial services and a BFSI background as well, how are you seeing that change affecting conversations, specifically with larger banks and insurance institutions? And the second part of the question being, do you see the customer experience change? Is the satisfaction increasing, or they are not happy with that?
So it's a good question, and I'm going to speak from a BFSI perspective, but truly it pretty much applicable to any industry. But in BFSI, if you look at it, which is banking, financial services, insurance, you are dealing with people's trust, right? That's the most important thing, because when a client is engaging with the bank or any financial institution for any help or any transaction, the thing that they are looking to establish is the trust right away. So the real conversations aided by GenAI will really help you establish that trust pretty quickly. Why? Because now you are not giving your personal opinion. The agent is not giving a personal opinion or making a conversations. They are actually going into a factual data that they have in front of them, which is a multiple of individual data, demographics data, market data, everything combined together, but it's personalized to the person or individual that they are talking to or institution. So it becomes an instant trust builder. So if you call somebody, for example, on a call, and they are fumbling through and they are rattling saying, oh yeah, if you want to do this, you have to do this, and then let me put you on hold for 1 minute, I got to check with somebody else and come back to you on that. And if you are, involved in a financial transaction, that's immediately a red flag and you are worried, versus when you are having, a GenAI powered real conversations where the person has the information right there and they are speaking now with authority and giving you directions or answering your question more effectively to the point, it's an instant trust builder and just makes a world of a difference in that interaction. And now if you put this one, you take this into the insurance industry or for that matter, even healthcare, right? When you call for the healthcare, if somebody picks up the call and they at least are 90% to the point what you are talking about, you feel comfortable. Versus somebody takes the call and just keeps on passing that call to somebody or start fumbling on their knowledge, it just doesn't make sense. So to me, it's gonna be a very powerful tool. Now, second part of your question is that are we seeing satisfaction increased or not? It's too early to say right now. While logically it should, and it will, but it's too early to say. And the reason for that is because the adoption takes time. You have to adopt it, you have to start using it in the right way, you have to start, as he was mentioning earlier, we are all used to ChatGPT. We type a question and we get the answers back. Now you are using the similar concept, but on a real conversation, right? So it is the agent who has to do that. You are not typing it. You are having a question, you are asking somebody. It's the agent, being, smart about it and using that. So when the adaptability will increase, I do believe that satisfaction will come and it will rise. I mean, we are already seeing a positive trend. But, is it there matured yet? It will take a little time and adoption,
Yeah. And one thing. Yeah, so the other thing that I work with my financial services customers on is a couple of things. One is, how do we adopt this at scale, right? It changes so fast, right? Imagine 13 months ago, now we've got, 20, 30 different large language models that are commercially viable. Then you've got dozens and dozens and dozens of small language models, right? Then you got open source models, right? And so it's just changing so fast. So it's so important to really establish a roadmap, right? And maybe you tackle automation on the customer side first, right? Let's take the burden off of the contact center, off of your employees, so that they have more time to do other things. And then you might look at internally, right? How do we use GenAI and conversational AI internally to then provide a better experience ultimately for our customers, right? It could be automating search or giving them a better tool to access information, right? So ingesting documents from a ton of different places. I mean, I was talking to, I think, Vinny over there, and he's got, how many systems do you have documents in? Half a dozen, right? Imagine you're a contact center, first day on the job, you get a call, and you gotta go check 6 different systems to find one answer, right? So how do we make them more efficient and productive, right? And then you start looking at automating things like HR and IT, and how do you apply Gen AI into the loop, right? It's gotta be a very methodical process, and organizations are at different points in their AI journey as well. And so most of the conversations I have actually have started with search, hyper access to information, right? Whether it's in the branch network, right? Or whether it's in the contact center or the back office, right? Making sure everyone has access to the right information at the right time so that you're able to follow policies and compliance and legal and all those regulatory bodies within organizations. So
I was going to say that automation is really a good example. So I was yesterday at Google Next, and we were having a conversation with one of my other clients, and we were discussing this, and the example they brought it out was, they were the insurance client, so they brought it out was that today, to intake the application and actually writing the policy, that's a monolithic process. You need to know so much about a person, you need to ask for so many documentation, and it's frustrating for both parties. So A, is frustrating for the client because they are providing the same information in a multiple different documents over and over. So when you say automation, that was a first step that they're gonna adopt, because that will cut down their cycle time by literally 30 to 40%, just one factor. Now they're gonna adopt to a couple of other stuff, which was like the search, right? So how do they have access to the information, as well as the risk assessment and the underwriting. So that's a huge area where most of the time in the insurance industry, people spend time is the risk assessment of the application and underwriting that policy. And that's a huge and time-consuming process. With the GenAI adoption, that is changing. And what they predicted, and they are seeing the early returns, is what used to take them 40 to 45 days is coming down to a week, and they believe there's still a room to make that better, right? And satisfaction of client has also increased because their clients are not as frustrated anymore. Because you're asking same information over and over, your application has not moved forward, they are checking, saying what's going on, I need to close on my home, or I need to close on my policy, anything. It applies to loans and any kind of life insurance policies and all that. So it was a really good use case, and that was eye-opening, that it really gonna change the way people start living their life and feel good about it.
And I'll just add, right? So he brought up the insurance use case, and I see one of my customers in the back, Andrew. When we first got with him in Persistent, they had some challenges around their underwriters weren't able to underwrite, right? So there's always a point in the process where the people requesting the policy is like, where is my policy, right? And so that wasn't going to a central contact center, it was going to the underwriters, right? And so they were being taken away from their actual job of underwriting, making sure they're writing safe policies, right? And so that's where we started, right? And then claims, right? So what's the status of my claim, right? We all go through this stuff, right? And usually you're contacting like your insurance agent, right? He's busy. He's trying to do a bunch of other stuff, and if his time is always filled with, we'll get back to you in 3 days, or we're processing a document, or we're processing some images, or we're waiting for the appraiser, or waiting for doctor's appointments and bills and all that sort of stuff, they're not able to do their job, right? And then billing will be next, right? So, that kind of goes back to that roadmap comment I was mentioning earlier. Like, where's the value immediately? It doesn't have to be a massive, big, giant project, right? If we can automate just 10%, 20%, 50% of mundane, repetitive questions, regardless of if it's internal, if it's external, if it's a customer, if it's HR, IT, et cetera, there's massive value for all of your businesses moving forward.
I think both Hitesh and Adam, you touched upon two very important aspects over here. One was obviously documents lying in almost half a dozen systems, talking about underwriting, Hitesh talking about how an insurance policy can be generated. Can we pivot into a point where we talk a little bit about how Kore as a platform is working in solving these issues, and more importantly, how it works with these complementary solutions around it in terms of bringing all of this together?
Yeah, so conversational AI by itself doesn't do a lot, right? It takes integrations to APIs and making sure that FAQs are fine, right? How do I access this, or where in the portal can I do that? Those are great. But where it really starts to get its horsepower is from the back-end systems that all of you guys have in place today, right? So how do we tap into that data? How do we tap into processes? How do we tap into status on claims or underwriting, right? And then how do we bring that to the forefront in terms of automating experiences, right? And so I think that's really the biggest thing. And we integrated to Guidewire as an example, and Salesforce for Andrew back there. I mean, it could be different contact center platforms. It could be different databases, right, or areas where you keep documents and policies and things like that. It could be ServiceNow, it could be Workday, right? And so when you look at the integration path of where our virtual assistants, right, regardless of channel, are going to pull the information and data from, I think that's what you guys do a phenomenal job of, and certainly getting these guys live like Andrew in the back.
And Hitesh, to you, just taking over from there in terms of while the platform Kore can work with all these complementary solutions and create these sort of experiences, how do we personalize these experiences based on industry, based on certain customer types? How easy or how difficult it is in terms of personalizing these and contextualizing these conversations to them?
So, it's a very much of a loaded question, but look, first of all, you have to understand the industry you're working in, and you have to look at the technology as the enablers. So what is the problem that you're trying to solve? As Adam rightly said, there are certain use cases that you need to first pick and decide. Do you want to, you can definitely build your roadmap and say, this is my nirvana state if I do this over this much period, but you're not going to be able to do that everything overnight. And you shouldn't, right? But you always take the step at a time to say, I automate this process, it can cut down 15% of the time. Or in the case of Andrew, they said that the underwriter was getting called and they were taking away from their time to actually write policies, to answering questions. Now, how do we take that thing and free their time and bubble up that so the customer center, contact center person can answer that question, and underwriters can actually do their job of underwriting, right? So it's a small thing, but it makes a whole lot of a difference for business as well as the client, because your customers are also happy, because they're also getting the progress made on their applications, plus they are getting updates, versus just getting an update and just have to wait for their policies getting forward in the process, right? So it's as I said, it all depends on the organization to organization and what's their appetite is. But I always believe that always the incremental win is the better win. It allows you a chance to adopt, realign, and then go forward, right? So that's always the right policy.
And just quick time check in the back. 2 minutes, okay. Real quick, any more questions or
We'll probably,
any questions
Yeah.
from the audience?
any questions in the audience?
And we'll be up here as well, so if something comes up, please feel free. One last 30-second answer question.
Probably last 30 seconds, and either of you can take it. What would be the 3 best practices you feel this crowd should take away from this conversation in terms of taking those baby steps and realizing value with conversational AI?
So top 3, plan, right? And by planning, it's where are you guys comfortable internally, right? You can't go off on projects and then come back to legal and compliance. They're like, we're not ready for that. Then you waste a bunch of time and things like that. So plan number 1, find a great partner, right? That will walk with you guys through the process once you've planned it out, like Persistent here. And then 3, continuously innovate, right? And measure. You got to have the data and the stats and the figures to back up what we have set forth so that it becomes really what we used to call back in the day at Avaya, a self-funded project, right? As you're saving, as you're providing efficiencies and productivity internally, those savings then propel innovation forward, right? So plan, execute, and measure are the kind of big 3 things.
I'll just take a quick thing. I mean, I pretty much agree to what Adam said, and I'm just going to add some nuances to it. That when you get into the GenAI solutions and a journey, I wouldn't say solution, journey forward, just be aware based on the industry you're in, the regulations, right? There are a lot of regulatory needs that will be there, as well as the ethical requirements based on the industry. So be aware of it. Make sure you tackle that with your company as well as the business side upfront, so that way your plan is pretty much solid, right? So you don't have to keep on going back to it. The second thing is, as you rightly mentioned, I almost call it, I come from a technology company, so I almost call it, be agile in your, approach for the GenAI. Because industry is evolving, the solutions are evolving. They're gonna, as we said, 15 months ago, ChatGPT was the greatest and latest thing. Today, even my kids use it, right? So things are gonna evolve. So just be ready for it, right? And the third thing is, use this to actually personalize your client's journey. If you do that, you will come out on the top, no matter which industry you're in. That's the best use of GenAI, is to make your client's life easy. It's gonna solve every other problem from there, right? So that's where I stop.
What would you say are the biggest opportunities within BFSI for? Well, for one is that you have solutions which are search and Gen AI, such as Microsoft Copilot. So that's available out of the box with a lot of the Office applications. And then per the subject that we're talking about, now more complex LLM models with the integration with back office systems like Adam was saying. So what are the biggest opportunities within the BFSI corporate units? And then second, what are other hurdles within BFSI that really are discouraging adoption?
I'm going to tackle the second question first. And it's really kind of two words, legal compliance. Can you guarantee me that every answer is going to be legally and compliant every single time with GenAI? Now, we can get there pretty close, right, with toxicity, the guardrails. I'm sure you guys heard of a lot this week, right, making sure that GenAI and the brains of those stay on path, right? No one wants to be Air Canada. I don't know if anyone has heard that story, but Google it, because that's what happens when it goes off the rails, right? Lawsuits and terrible press. Now, the first part of the question, most common areas where folks are tackling, conversational / Gen AI. Most of my conversations always include search, hyper-access, and I really refer to as hyper-access information, right? Because that really provides a Gen or ChatGPT-like experience, but using your own data, right? Making sure it's safe and It's only pulling for something that it knows, right? So that would be number one. And then number two, real quick, and we're probably out of time, but automating low-hanging fruit on the CX side. Biggest value, especially in voice, right? Highest cost to serve. And if you can automate 20 to 50% of those calls because it's what's my balance, transfer money, that's easy.
So I guess I talk really loud. Mine's a follow-up to the hurdles and legal and compliance, right? My applications are supporting, a little different than all of you, but a medical device software. And my argument with legal and compliance is I've got 440 agents around the world, and my ability to ensure that every one of their responses verbally in a phone call is less than when I'm using knowledge and documentation. So when you say legal and compliance, like in my mind, I'm actually becoming more compliant when I'm giving information that is coming from data and knowledge base and documentation than I am letting 400 people answer phone calls.
Yes, because you can't guarantee that those people are going to say the same thing.
No.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and there's a lot of risk. There's a lot of risk there. Yeah, yeah.
So one of the portion of the question that will address your concern is the LLM, right? So what happens is that which LLM you're gonna use eventually will define, because as a regulated industry that you are in, you may consume some of the public information, but most likely you're gonna have a closed LLM or the version of LLM, because you can't make certain information public. So that's what the compliance means. There are HIPAA rules and there are certain other rules that you have to comply for the privacy of the patient information and all that. So how do you integrate that? So whether you go public LLM, private LLM, if you go private LLM, you have to build certain things or bring certain info, otherwise it doesn't have much into it, right? So those kind of stuff.
And then it's always different, right? Internally versus externally as well, right? What's your risk tolerance for providing information and data externally versus giving additional information or tools to the agents, right? And so that's always the big. Do we let our customers interact with it, or do we keep it internal first? Because that's where our risk assessments lie within.
So on the same topic, what's your opinion of being able to train an LLM to understand all the risk and compliance associated, like, let's say, with financial services, so that it could then review any response that's generated and know if it's triggering either disclosures or adding a certain level of risk? Because I think, having worked in banking for over 25 years and argued with a lot of legal and compliance people in my life, there's going to have to be something to get them comfortable, because they tend to be move the slowest,
Absolutely. You are very right, because there is nothing like a fully compliant system ever in the world, right? No matter what you do, they are never happy. Let's be very honest about it, right? So, insurance companies are the good example right now, because they are already started to use the underwriting and risk assessment. So they are building their LLM by loading all the regulatory requirements. But what happens is that you need to continuously update them. You need to make sure that they are updated, because otherwise you're going against the outdated LLM suddenly, which is not adding value to you or covering you from the risk perspective. So it is appetite of how much you want to invest into it, Because when you go private LLM, now you're trying to pull information from somewhere into your LLM. You're no longer going against the public LLMs, right? So that becomes a little bit of a costly affair than the public LLMs, because public LLMs are generally available for everybody, but private has its own regulators. Now, there are providers in the market who are started to provide the regulatory services for insurance as a LLM, right? That you can go ahead and, if you trust that as an organization, and if you want to tie up to that, that's the one alternative. And certain larger firms will say, no, I'm going to have my own, versus the mid-sized player will say, maybe I will tap into it, right? Because at least I'm covered through that. So it's all about cost, time, how much you want to expose yourself or not. Right?
You mentioned about like considerations from a business point of view. Does that include like for me in research, like we always have innovation, we have like new IP or existing IP, and if you create new IP ownership, is that part of that?
Because the reason you are creating IP is that you want to monetize, whether internally or externally, doesn't matter. So then all the different kind of a question comes in, how do you play with it? Because if it was no IP involved, it's a completely different, right? It's a consumer level information for everybody. But when there's IP involved, suddenly you start to monetize that.
And we're being kicked off the stage. So we'll be
We are
outside.
here.
If you have any questions, please feel free to stop us. Yeah, but appreciate everyone's time and the questions. If anyone has any else, please let us know.
Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you. Thank you, Adam. Thank you, Hitesh.